based on the way the year is going, we both agree if they do want to contend, they probably need to make this trade. So I guess we'll both go into it. We both have a trade that's proposed. The only difference between the two trades is the fact that one of us has one less player and one of us has one more pick. So I'm not sure if you want to go first with your trade.
I have two more players. Yeah, so for me, I can go first. Because I think I know where you're gonna be going with this. I think you're undervaluing James Harden. So you might say I'm overvaluing him. I actually think that if Houston would accept this, Toronto would take this any day of the week. But Houston probably still won't accept it just because of how much they value James Harden. But I can see it being Pascal Siakam, Norm Powell, Malachi Flynn, and at least a protected first round pick, potentially a second protected first round pick way down the line, but that one would be very, very protective. But yeah, no, that's definitely, I think it's going to take at least those three players and one first round pick. But I think that Houston actually would, in that situation, give up PJ Tucker as well. And PJ Tucker has a sneakily good amount of value in this league, especially playing alongside James Harden. And he's played in Toronto in the past. Toronto team would be the backup. I can see him kind of slotting in at power forward in the starting lineup, depending on occasion, depending on who the other team is starting. Because OG would essentially be your starting power forward, again, depending on who's starting the other team, if they have a bit smaller or a bit weaker of one. If not, he'd be playing at the small forward. And then Tucker and Chris Boucher would split the minutes at power forward. Chris Boucher has been very, very good this year. And I would hate this trade as a Raptors player, but I would love this trade as well. I'd hate it knowing that in the perfect sense of the form, the Raptors could be a great team with Powell and Siakam in the future. Flynn's looked very strong as well. And if they're playing to their utmost potential, then I think that I don't know if 2 years of James Harden is worth it. Just because you can have Siakam for the next 5-10 years and he can be your anchor on your team. But with that being said, his value's gone down quite a bit this year. His value's gone down since the bubble last year. He's been very frustrated this year. He's been ejected out of two of the last 3 games. He's been either ejected, and in that third game that he didn't get ejected, well, he didn't play because they benched him. So I think his value's gone down, and the Raptors have actually looked even better without him. Chris Boucher has looked just as good, if not better, so far this year as Siakam in certain instances. So I don't think that they're going to lose much right away. They lose in the long term, but just being able to bring over a player like James Harden and the fact that you have Kyle Lowry at his current age, they want to compete right now, and this is a move to compete right now in the next 2 years. Malachi Flynn, if you have Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, and James Harden, there's no minutes for Malachi Flynn either way. So as much as he's going to be great for them in 3 years, 2 to 3 years, 4 years, especially if Kyle Lowry leaves, but if they plan on keeping Kyle Lowry there and they plan on bringing James Harden in and competing this year and next year, there's just no minutes for him. So I see him having more value on a team like Houston. Again, I just don't see Houston taking this deal. I think they're going to value Harden to another level than this, and I don't think they're going to take it, especially considering Siakam and Powell's value has gone down this year so far. But in a few months, it could all change. And if the Raptors did offer this and Houston did accept, I think the Raptors take it all day.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm both teams, I personally if I'm Houston, I would take that deal absolutely, because I think I'm getting a lot more than I probably should for James Harden. But at the same time, they've clearly been overvaluing him, or a trade would have happened by now. Not overvaluing in the sense of not understanding or thinking James Harden is a better player that he is. It's really the contract that somewhat takes away some of the value, because there is so many teams where unless James Harden has physically went out and said, I want to go play for you, you probably don't believe you're getting more than 2 years of James Harden. So you're not trading for James Harden. You're trading for 2 years of James Harden. And that's different in terms of the value that you're trading for. So that's why I think it would be similar to Kawhi in terms of they would, if they actually make a deal, have to take some type of bargain, because they're not going to get full value for James Harden. It's either they're going to take somewhat of a bargain trade, even if it's just a little bit, or it's not going to happen. So the trade I had was 2 players and 2 picks from the Raptors going to the Rockets solely for James Harden. So I have Pascal Siakam and Norman Powell going to the Rockets from the Raptors, and then 2 picks as well. So there is this year's 2021 pick. I had a protected top 8. I don't see any reason why the Raptors would fall bottom 8 if they got James Harden as well. But based obviously on their record right now, if they want to ensure that they're still going to have a lottery selection, if some weird thing happens and they were in it, then that's probably safe. And then I would say the second pick would probably come in 2024. In terms of the protection, I'm not sure exactly. That really depends on how Masai thinks the team is going to look in 3 years. If he thinks they're going to be able to re-sign Harden, go ahead, give it unprotected, make it or very limited protection. But if it's something where they think in 3 years that that team might be in a similar spot, then I would say you probably need to make that pick like top 15 protected as well. So I would say realistically, Powell, Siakam, top 8 protected first this year, and then probably a top 15 protected in 2014. The main difference I would think too is with Tucker, like you said yourself, he does have a lot of value in his own right. And in the Kawhi trade, they did receive Danny Green as well, who did have that value. So if you take out Green and you take out Tucker essentially, then that would be like them giving up DeRozan, Pirtle, and a third player plus that pick just for Kawhi kind of thing. So that's kind of where I don't feel like the third player is necessary. And I think where the minutes come in is even with James Harden, if he goes to Toronto and they have Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and James Harden, you already have a crowded situation. And I think realistically, instead of trading Flynn, they'll probably move on from Lowry because he has a lot more value. He's playing awesome so far this year. And with that too, like it hurts to see him go, but realistically, if you're trying to just overhaul the franchise and you're trying to make the changes, that would be the only way. I just don't see where Harden, Lowry, and Fred all mesh together. So like there's a lot of moving parts if you make this trade, and that's why I wouldn't necessarily want to do it if I'm Toronto. But yeah, that's where it kind of sits in with me, where I think it'll just be if they did the 2 players and the 2 picks.
I can definitely see that why you're thinking that why we were saying they're gonna take less for him. I actually personally I don't think that comparing just James Harden to Kawhi Leonard trade is fair in any kind of sense of the word. James Harden has so much more value. I think you should be looking at more like the Anthony Davis trade or the Paul George trade, because James Harden is considered actually a higher MVP candidate than both of those players. And let's look at Paul George. He went for Gregis Alexander, who is a future All-Star, currently leading OKC as the best player on that team. 4 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. 4 first-round picks. And if we're looking at Anthony Davis, we're talking about picks plus Ball, who has a lot of potential as a high lottery pick, who's been doing very good this year, Brandon Ingram, who is current All-Star, and Josh Hart. So it's definitely, when we're talking about the Kawhi Leonard trade, they only were able to get him for just DeRozan, when DeRozan in his own right is an All-Star at the very least, but it's because he wouldn't play for that team. James Harden has shown he's going to play for Houston, so I think it's going to take a lot for any team to get him, because I think he's going to play there the whole year if they don't offer him the house. That's why I think I don't think that Houston even takes this offer from Toronto, even if they offer it. So I wish that they would, though, because I do think that James Harden is that much of a difference maker, and he can just take that team to a whole new length. But we'll see. It's hard to say.
Do you honestly think that an NBA professional athlete finds out 52 minutes or so before a game that they have a sprained ankle and they can't play? He didn't play because he didn't want to tonight. He might be playing, but he is not committed to Houston, and they know that. And you have to think too.
When he plays, he's very successful.
Yes, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the value you're going to get for a guy who has publicly said, I do not want to play here, is only stepping on the court to put up numbers for his own personal benefit, is not going to resign there, potentially. But the difference,
Anthony Davis?
potentially, but the difference here is there wasn't a bunch of the Pelicans were out shopping Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis didn't publicly say the things that James
Yes, he
Harden
did.
did. And even then, they still had the opportunity to do a sign and trade, and it was that year. And the difference with the Paul George thing, too, is that they had no reason to trade Paul George. The
So,
Clippers had to give up so much because it was a trade that wasn't necessarily supposed to happen. They had to give up that much to convince a team that didn't want to trade a player to trade a player. So that's why they had to give up so much versus a team
well, they
that
also
knows they
they
have
also
to
had
trade
to.
this player. There's a very
So
big difference.
I completely disagree with you in the only sense that Anthony Davis asked for a trade publicly did not play at all for that team. He only played 25 minutes a game for almost a whole season, and lost a whole year for New Orleans. Like they waited a whole year, and he was putting them through worse than what James Harden put him through, no matter what. Because whenever James Harden's playing, at least he put up 44 and 17 the other day. And Paul George, he asked to be traded. He wasn't going to play for the Thunder the next year. Like he, this is the same kind of situation as Davis and George, but for a better player. Houston's not going to trade him away for anything that's not going to better their team in a much better way than what James Harden's going to have. We look at those teams like the Clippers or I mean not the Clippers, but the Thunder and the Pelicans. Thunder's doing surprisingly well this year, mainly because of Gretus Alexander, and the Pelicans are actually looking very, very good this year, only because of that trade. So I definitely think that's going to take a lot, and that's why I don't see them taking this trade from the Raptors. I don't see them taking very much. I see them getting the house and getting what Paul George asked for. But it's going to take at least 6 months. But we'll see. James Harden's definitely very interesting talk right now, and he's going to go somewhere. I know he had a sprained ankle today. Maybe it was legit, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Hard to say. But when he does play, he's still one of the best players in the planet, and he knows it.
Definitely, but give us a like, comment, subscribe, guys. Let us know what you guys think, and we'll see you guys next time.
I